Greetings, distinguished colleagues from around the world, and welcome to this closed-door workshop on strengthening bilateral ties between the United States and Bahrain. For those of you whom I've not yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Tess Davis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Antiquities Coalition. As an organization dedicated to fighting cultural racketeering while promoting responsible cultural exchange, we truly commend the United States government and the Kingdom of Bahrain for their leadership in safeguarding our shared cultural heritage. And we likewise thank our sponsors at the U.S. Embassy in Manana and the Department of State, whose generous support has made this forum possible, as well as our partners in the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities, or BACA. Just a few notes about technology before we begin. We are pleased to offer simultaneous interpretation today. There's a button on the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen that says interpretation. And if you would like to take advantage of this feature, click that button and then select the language you would like to hear. We also respectfully ask that all speakers be mindful of the interpreters and speak slowly, as well as to keep yourself on mute when not speaking. If you need any technical assistance, you may reach out to us through the chat function, which is also located on the navigation bar. Please additionally note that today's program is being recorded. This session is part of a wider online forum to promote mutual understanding between the United States, still the largest art market in the world, and Bahrain, which is quickly becoming one of its most important players. We're joined today by internationally recognized leaders in government and the arts from both countries who will discuss challenges to combating crimes via cultural property, as well as the shared principles that promote responsible cultural exchange. It's now my honor to turn the floor over to Dr. Richard Curran, who will moderate today's discussion. Dr. Curran is currently the Distinguished Scholar and Ambassador at Large of the Smithsonian Institution, where he helps to guide the world's largest museum, research, and educational organization. He's worked for the Smithsonian for 45 years, serving in a variety of roles, including Undersecretary for more than a decade, and at one time or another, overseeing all of the institution's museums, scientific research centers, cultural and educational programs. So cultural heritage protection and preservation is a core focus of Dr. Curran's work. And for 2 decades, he directed the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, working with communities in the US and around the world to preserve and extend their living cultural heritage. He served on the US UNESCO Commission and helped to draft the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, now ratified by more than 170 nations. Dr. Curran also serves, relevant to today's discussion, as the Smithsonian representative on the U.S. Department of State's Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee and chairs its preservation working group. Finally, he is a founding board member of the International Alliance for the Protection of Heritage in Conflict Areas, the ALA Foundation, that supports funding for cultural protection and recovery in conflict areas. Dr. Curran, again, we are very honored to have you, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Tess, and thank you to the Antiquities Coalition. Good afternoon, or good morning, as the case may be. Very glad to join you today and with friends and colleagues in this field. As further evidence of U.S. and Bahraini commitment to today's topic, we're really honored to have diplomatic and cultural leaders from both of our governments, both of our countries together today for this session. Her Excellency Sheikh Hamai Al Khalifa is president of the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities in the Kingdom of Bahrain. She's a leading figure in the Arab world for her work in the field of culture. Her Excellency has spearheaded national efforts to develop the cultural infrastructure of the Kingdom of Bahrain for heritage conservation and the growth of sustainable tourism. The president of the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities, Her Excellency is the foremost public expert in the field, holding the unique portfolios of the Ministry for Culture and Information and then
من خلال الوزارات التي تولتها الثقافة والإعلام.
Acting Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Matthew joined the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in July 2019. He's a career member of the Senior Foreign Service class of Minister Counselor and has served his country as a Foreign Service officer since 1990. Prior to his arrival at ECA, he served as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of the United States to the Kingdom of Belgium from 2016 to 2019, including a 18-month stint as Charge d'Affaires. And then there's Dr. Munir Bushnaki, Special Advisor to the Director General of ICRAM and Special Advisor to the Director General of UNESCO. Dr. Munir Bushnaki has had a 25-year career in UNESCO as Assistant Director General of Culture, Director of the Division of Cultural Heritage, and as Director of the World Heritage Center. He was Director General of ICRAM, which is the Center for the Study and Preservation of Restoration of Cultural Property from 2005 to 2011. And currently, Munir is acting Special Advisor to the Director General of ICRAM and the Director General, an amazing portfolio. Munir is also a beloved colleague. We've worked together on many things over the years. So let me start our session by asking a question to Her Excellency Sheikh Hameh, which is to provide some background. You know, we know the Middle East and North Africa has a rich and diverse history, much to lose from cultural racketeering. Daesh made front page headlines around the world with its pillaging of the cradle of civilization, but the threat goes really farther beyond Iraq and Syria. Looting from antiquities has funded activities, terrorist activities in Libya, funded Al-Qaeda and Houthi militias in Yemen, and further afield, as with the Taliban in Afghanistan. So this terrorist financing even goes hand in hand with other criminal activities like money laundering and other crimes to which the art market is particularly vulnerable. Now, art market leaders, the banking industry and governments, law enforcement have increasingly recognized the growing risks from this criminal activity, calling for strengthened best practices and even legislation to fight back while better protecting legitimate collectors, museums, and market actors. So with the creation, Your Excellency, of new and prominent museums in a booming art market and a strong push for cultural tourism, the Gulf states are quickly becoming key players in this global discussion. You're at the center of it. In particular, with strong ministerial leadership from the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities, Bahrain is now enjoying a prominent role in the art world, serving as the regional headquarters for the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. So, Your Excellency, you've personally spearheaded a number of relevant initiatives. Would you begin our discussion by sharing why you believe these efforts are important and what you hope to achieve? Your Excellency?
Thank you very much, and very nice to see you again. We miss you here in Bahrain, and I hope to see you soon in Washington or New York next week. Allow me to speak in Arabic, my language, if you don't mind. I think there is a translation.
Please. And I think people can go to the interpretation button and make sure people click on that.
Thanks a lot. In
the beginning, I must thank the United States Foreign Service and the United States, and also BACA. We need them in this time very much, especially when we face so many challenges now. We all support resisting things like illicit trade. Every organization is responsible for this protection, and we must fight together. We must fight together to fight these illicit practices. And we must try to protect this material and immaterial heritage. We also have responsibility to help things like the Bahrain Museum. And this is the first museum that meets worldwide standards in the region. And we can also speak about the its role in the beginning of a significant museum in the Islamic world, and also service to Bahrain in an initiative that will allow us to increase the infrastructure to preserve the heritage sites in the private sector. Through this project, we were able to begin the building of many museums, which contributes to raising awareness among the local community. And I must say here that the museums are very valuable to the local community. And it brings in many visitors in. And they, as they come in, bring a message to all people. And this is in connection with UNESCO and preserving cultural heritage. And Bahrain, as a center for global heritage, we've worked together with UNESCO in order to follow up on preserving heritage throughout the world. I must also say here that there are many accomplishments to the center, along with UNESCO. And one of these is a book that records many of the most important cultural heritage sites. And we have also had 3 locations listed on the list of of global heritage. And we hope that there will be 3 other locations added in the future. Of course, Bahrain participated in writing the agreement with UNESCO that was related to the illicit trade in cultural property. And this is our topic today. So thank you so much for this workshop, which is so important, which shines light on this phenomenon that we must work together to fight against. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And, you know, as someone who's worked my life in museums at the Smithsonian in Washington and hosting, pre-COVID anyway, some 30 million visitors a year, we recognize the importance of museums in raising the consciousness of you know, both our citizens and other visitors, so they understand the importance of heritage. So we understand that legitimate work is quite important, and that Bahrain is serving as a leader in the region in doing that. I turn to Assistant Secretary Lusenhop. Washington seems increasingly has recognized the severity of the threat of looting and trafficking world heritage. It's a threat to national security and even legitimate marketplaces. So the Department of State, U.S. Department of State, has been a leader in combating illicit trade around the globe, as well as recovering and repatriating looted treasures to their country of origin, in partnership, of course, with the Departments of Homeland Security, Justice, and the Treasury. Can you share with us today how the U.S. government is partnering with allies like Bahrain, as well as the private sector, to tackle these challenges?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Curran. Good morning to everyone, and good afternoon to our friends in Bahrain. Your Excellency, Sheikh Hamai, Dr. Bushnaki, we spoke back in August. Chargé Nardi. I'm glad that the embassy can participate in this discussion today. Yeah, in the United States, we're working more and more actively to investigate crimes involving cultural property theft, looting, trafficking, to prosecute offenders, to return priceless works of art back to their rightful owners. And this is something that we have learned over the past, I'd say 25 years, the intersection of cultural heritage, terrorist financing, looting, illicit trafficking requires a lot of partnerships. The United States cannot do this kind of work alone. We rely on collaboration and coordination with foreign government partners like Bahrain and responsible leaders in academia, the museum community, and in the arts trade. And we've approached this issue in several different ways. We are a state party to the UNESCO 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing illicit import, export, and transport of ownership of cultural property. And as such, we have implemented cultural property agreements and emergency restrictions to prevent the illicit trade of cultural artifacts and to protect the integrity of the US art market. And within the US government, we've realized that collaboration and cooperation within the government is also critically important. And for that reason, in 2016, we established the Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee, which Dr. Curran and his institution are members. And the goal of this committee is to coordinate US government's diplomatic and law enforcement efforts to disrupt trafficking networks, to preserve heritage sites, and to protect against looting and destruction of cultural property. There are 12 US government agencies involved in the Cultural Antiquities Task Force, State Department, Smithsonian Institution, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and others. And we've been able to collaborate with the Smithsonian Institution to support more than 20 training sessions for 500 US law enforcement personnel, including investigators, Customs and Border Patrol officers, and prosecutors. And these law enforcement personnel in turn are better able to interact and coordinate with their foreign counterparts. The task force agencies have repatriated more than 20,000 pieces of cultural property to more than 45 countries. And they've worked together to conduct more than 80 cultural property workshops to enhance capacity of our foreign partners, including investigators and customs officers, prosecutors, judges, heritage professionals, and more. The task force also supports initiatives for site security, inventories of at-risk sites, public education and outreach, and promoting sustainable livelihoods as alternatives to looting and trafficking. We've worked with the International Council of Museums to develop what we call the red lists of cultural objects at risk. And these are compact booklets that are easy to read and with plentiful illustrations, and that help customs officials, border officials, police, museums, art dealers, and more better identify the kinds of materials that can be trafficked illicitly. And they're recognized as a very valuable tool in preventing the traffic of looted materials. Lots of different other projects and initiatives underway with the private sector in the United States and with civil society groups. We work very closely with the Smithsonian Institution, the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, and the organizers of this panel today, the Antiquities Coalition. So we feel that our efforts are multiplied very much when we can work in close partnership with partner governments like Bahrain and others. And then they can help us reach out to local communities, raise awareness among their own publics about this issue, and partner with entrepreneurs and sustainable tourism to protect these cultural heritage sites while also gaining the economic benefits of tourism. So I'll stop there. That was just a brief overview of our approach, which is based on collaboration and cooperation within the government, and then collaboration and cooperation with partner states like Bahrain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Assistant Secretary. And now I turn to my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Bushnaki. So, Munir, you're an expert in international cultural exchange, serving as you did as ADG for UNESCO for so many years and in many other roles. How can and now you advise also the Bahraini government in its cultural heritage and museum sector. So how can the US and Bahraini governments, as well as their art and museum sectors, strengthen cooperation in combating antiquities trafficking while increasing responsible cultural exchange, something we don't want to cut off? Munir? Munir, you're on mute.
Unmute. Yes, thank you, Richard, for this very important introduction, and thanks to also Her Excellency Sheikh Hamay and His Excellency Matthew Lussenhope for the very important presentation about this topic. And I am really honored to have worked for so many years. I mean, all my life was in cultural heritage, whether at national level or international level. And now I am also pleased and honored to be with Sheikh Hamay and her colleagues, Nadine Boxmati, Sheikh Khalifa Al-Khalifa, Sheikh Ibrahim. They are a team of experts, and the new director of museums, Dr. Salman Al-Mahiri. I think we are all very much committed to the keywords that were used by His Excellency Matthew Lussenhope about, first of all, raising awareness. We have seen in many places, and I have seen personally at the end of the civil crisis in Lebanon, how the poor population was authorized to sell objects to those who were having some means, and how objects were done for this traffic and fueling the trafficking of cultural property. So the first direction that UNESCO has given in the various meetings that we organized under Mr. Amadou Makhtar, because he was one of the champions of the return of objects to Africa, objects looted, because always we have to make the definition about the illicit traffic is about the object, not about them. We don't know the origin. This is very important for the art dealers to have to know exactly the origin of the objects. And so I followed, at least in one or two specific situations, one in Mali and one in Lebanon, how the poor population was not aware of the importance of the objects, because they feel if they can sell this object, they can receive some dollars. And we have seen after that the development of the international terrorist groups, they understood that there is a value in this object, and a real traffic started to inundate the marketplaces, whether in Geneva or in Japan or in the Gulf or in America. And I think that today it is very important to have this kind of meetings, because this is the way to address two main issues. One, education. I think it is very important for the ministries, of Education in relation with the Ministries of Culture to work on educating the young population, the young children in the primary school, in the grammar school, and up to university, why it is important to make sure that there is no illicit traffic of objects. This is one important way. And I think it is starting. It is starting, for example, when we launched Heritage in the Hand of Young People. This is a document which is now translated into more than 40 languages and distributed all over the world. The second aspect, and this is what Her Excellency Sheikh Hamay, but also Her Excellency Mr. Matthew Lussenhope said, raising awareness. Raising awareness is at different levels. First of all, at the level of the art dealers. We started to prepare a code of ethics for the art dealers, because I know that sometimes we were accused by some art dealers to block any of their business. It is not true. We are not against business in art as far as it is legitimate, as it is not selling objects which have no provenance. And this is the second very important point, raising awareness at different levels of training the director of museums, training the director of archaeological sites, etc., about the protection of the objects. And as you know, I visited a number of sites, for example, in Libya or in Afghanistan, where unfortunately the stores, the places where objects are maintained have not even an inventory. It is very, very important to make sure that there is an awareness at different levels of responsibilities. And also, and we started to do it with Interpol, with the customs organizations, to have also the policemen and the customs people to be aware about the possibility of having in the luggage objects, archaeological items, archaeological work of art transiting. And here in Bahrain, we have had an example of an object which was transiting in Bahrain. And fortunately, the head of the French archaeological mission was there, and he made an evaluation, and the object was seized by the customs of Bahrain. So yes, Your Excellency Matthew Lussenhope, yes, Bahrain can play an important role by its place here at the center of the Gulf area, and by the creation of this Arab Regional Center, which is now opening up for meetings, workshops, training, and this is this way that we can see the official departments like the federal department in the United States and the huge movement which is happening actually in the world. I was telling my colleagues and friends in Washington just before this talk about the decision made yesterday by President Macron in France, going himself in the Musée du Quai Branly in Paris and giving back to the Minister of Culture of Benin, Minister of Culture of Benin, 26 objects which were in the museums of France and now will return to Abomey. It is a World Heritage Site in Benin, and they will recuperate in the Museum of Benin these 26 objects. I think what you are doing in the United States, for example, with the return of the Gilgamesh tablet, is very important to be known and to show to the art dealers, to the public, to the communities that today it is not anymore possible to continue the looting of the objects and the illicit excavations to get money through this illicit traffic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bushnaki. And you raise the profile in terms of what Bahrain is doing, both internally in terms of its own cultural heritage, but also beyond its borders and through the Arab Regional Center. So I turn to Her Excellency Sheikh Hamay you sit in such an important position in terms of your leadership, both in Bahrain, in terms of the region, in terms of the world.
Oh,
So, what do you envision as the opportunities that Bahrain and through your networks has the opportunity to protect cultural heritage, not only in your country, but in the region and beyond?
the region. Thank you again, Dr. Curran. We'll go back to the regional center. Okay, I'll shift to Arabic. بالطبع المركز العربي الإقليمي للتراث العالمي لعب دورا هاما.
We talk about the regional center, which the important role in to bring these important messages. So first, we are looking closely on training our national staff in the national regional center and to raise their awareness and to participate in the community in order to let them participate and raise their awareness. And there is important role for the center to play in the region and on the level of Arab countries. And with UNESCO also to enlist all the important sites and also to apply the rules and policies and also to have the support of local authorities to apply the law. And also one of our goals is to continue the cooperation with the whole world, many countries, in order to recognize and enlist all the heritage and properties. And this is why our partnership and work with the US is very important in order to fight against illicit trade and protect the cultural properties, especially in our area, because it's targeted. And so we are trying to work with the elite in our communities. And we hope to have more lectures and more educational meetings. So we would love to have Dr. Curran with us in Bahrain to listen to what you have to educate us.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's I think we're all learning from each other. As Assistant Secretary Lusenhop had said, what we've been seeing in the United States is much more coordination between the museum and heritage sector and law enforcement. And, you know, it's not only curators from the Smithsonian, you know, instructing FBI agents and Homeland Security inspectors about ancient antiquities. There's also something we learn as museum and cultural professionals. I know personally, you know, we've been working with an international team on the Mosul Museum, for example, destroyed by Daesh and damaged, you know, severely damaged, and working with our Iraqi partners, World Monuments Fund, the Louvre, Olive Foundation, and so on. And I remember the first time I visited there, we had been instructed by the FBI to how to look at a museum as a crime scene. Now, just think about that for a minute. You know, we take courses in anthropology and history and archaeology. We do our work in museum studies. But now we have senior people who are being instructed by law enforcement about what to look for, what clues to look for in a museum where you have damage and destruction, and what might look at as destruction at one point may actually be a cover for looting objects blowing up certain things, but taking others. So it was very instructive, and we've learned. So as I turn to our Assistant Secretary, we have seen, and you've illuminated, I think, considerable progress in the fight against cultural crimes, looting, and trafficking of antiquities. But what would you say are the obstacles that remain? What do you view as the top challenges facing governments and law enforcement today?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the previous comments. This has been very interesting. I think one of the big challenges that we face today in this field is COVID. I mean, COVID pandemic has impacted our lives negatively in so many ways, but it's also impacted the looting and theft and trafficking of cultural antiquities for two reasons. One is due to lockdowns and restrictions on travel. It's been increasingly difficult for law enforcement to monitor sites and monitor the trafficking of these things. And as well, the economic disruption brought on by COVID, job losses, et cetera, have just increased the amount of looting for profit. So there's a lot of cultural property moving across borders into the international marketplace, and that has always been a challenge for law enforcement. I think another challenge has been the growth of e-commerce, the buying and selling of materials online. That's certainly grown during the pandemic, but it is a new marketplace, either openly or on the dark web, where looted materials are trafficked. Another huge challenge is the lack of detailed inventories of cultural property. Some countries do better than others, but in general, we lack documentation, we lack theft reports, records, et cetera, that can help law enforcement track looted materials and hopefully find them. We do have more technological tools now than we had in the past, and I think we can leverage that, means of communications and sharing of digital materials and digital information. That's critical for U.S. law enforcement to know, where was an object last seen, where was it inventoried, where that's critical for carrying out investigations like this. We also have a challenge of lax enforcement of cultural property laws in our country and other countries. So some prosecutors or police or judges may see this kind of crime, looting and trafficking of materials, as not as serious as other crimes and not as high a priority. This is a key part of, as Dr. Bushnaki said, the outreach and the education of stakeholders in this issue, and that certainly includes the judicial branch and judges and prosecutors. I mean, because we have to make the case and that crimes involving cultural heritage are not victimless. Their victims are communities, families who lose their heritage, impacts their practice of their religion, their connection with ancestors, their ability to make a living, their sense of identity. These are attacked and destroyed when heritage is destroyed and looted. Once they enter the market, they're never seen again. I guess one final challenge is the international art market. The State Department, the Cultural Antiquities Task Force are not in the business of putting legitimate trade of art and antiquities out of business. We want to protect the art market from criminal activity, from forgery, from market manipulation, from tax evasion and money laundering. I think we all want a clean and open and transparent arts market that's free of stolen and looted material. We want all of our actors in this trade to be responsible and to ensure that they don't unknowingly buy stolen goods. But positive note, we have made some progress here in the United States. Last year, a man in California was charged with unlawfully importing an ancient mosaic from the Middle East. That was a case that was successfully brought by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security in New York last year charged a New York man with smuggling Egyptian cultural property into the United States. That material was returned to the Egyptian government and resulted in 6 arrests in Europe. So we can work together with partners within the government, with the private sector, with the arts trade, with museum community, and with international partners to face these challenges. And I think it's really critically important that we do so, because the looting of cultural heritage is not a victimless crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Assistant Secretary. And Dr. Bushnaki, to where Assistant Secretary Lusenhop left off, you know, you've had to wrestle with the area of art, the art market, the museum community, the cultural heritage agencies. You know, you've been part of the formulation of different international treaties with regard to the considerations of such organizations, with regard to looting and return of cultural property. You've played a major role over your career in defining the normative aspects of professional practice, so we can do legitimate archaeology, museology, art market, and so on, cultural heritage work. What challenges do you see for museums and the art market going ahead? You raised issues before of awareness and provenance. What are really, can you lay out the challenges from their point of view, from the point of view of the art market and museums? What are the challenges they face in today's world? Munir, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. No, it is an important question, Richard, and it's true that we have to develop it further. But I would like to, say on the aspect of normative action, it was important at UNESCO to see and to evaluate the possibility of implementing the first convention of UNESCO, which was the 1954 convention called the Hague Convention. We were able to see with Professor Boylan from London that unfortunately we were not able to implement the convention at the international level, and we were obliged to do a second protocol for this convention after having seen how the conflicts developed in the second part of the 20th century. And this is how we added a second protocol called the Protocol of The Hague of 1999. This is one aspect. The second aspect was also to work on the implementation of the 1970 convention by reinforcing the International Coordination Committee for the Restitution and Return of Cultural Property. And I think this is a very important challenge to make known the legal text, the legal formulation, which is now accepted universally at all levels of responsible, either at public, in the public services or also in the private communities. I would like to also at this point to reply to a question from Mr. Yaroub El Abdullah, when I was saying that we were discussing with the art dealers for the code of ethics, and we were speaking about work of arts which are coming from inheritage of private people, of paintings, etc. We are not saying that not anything should be put in sale in the art market. But what we are fighting, and we are working with you particularly, as you know, to make sure that what is stolen, what has been taken out of a country and to be put on the market is absolutely forbidden, and we have to stop this. The second aspect is the presentation in the museums. What we have seen is the fact that we know, for example, that even after the Iraqi war, I received 8 catalogs by the chief of archaeological mission working in Iraq, but in these catalogs, there was no detail of objects which were stolen. What we need, as you know, as a historian of art, as specialist of museums, you cannot go to, look after and to search after an object if you don't have the references, the dimension, the picture, the place of provenance, in order to reach a real result in the return of the objects to their country of origin. And this is another very important challenge, to make sure that all museums, as His Excellency Mr. Lusenhoff said, some have the inventories, but many do not have the inventories, not only of the objects which are in the showcase, but also and mainly the objects which are in the stores. I think these are the elements that will help the security services, FBI, and other institutions like the Carabinieri in Italy, like the Department of Police in France. And there are now bodies which are looking seriously at the objects which are stolen and that should be returned to their country of origin. But there are also situations where I was in charge, for example, of the file concerning the Elgin Marbles, which were taken from the Parthenon during the Ottoman period by Lord Elgin and sent to the British Museum. And now there is a very strong request from the government of Greece, and since the time of Melina Mercouri as Minister of Culture, to have these objects returned to Athens. The first reply at the time was that they don't have a space and all the conditions of protection and conservation of these objects. And then the Greek built a museum, the Acropolis Museum, and put the place where normally these objects should be returned. So it is a complex issue. It is an issue which has, as you said very rightly, a legal aspect, but this is also, there is an aspect which is a more, an aspect of psychology, of cultural behavior, and this has to be really tackled by negotiations, by cooperation. And there is now more and more a vision by the large museums, as you know, the Louvre, the Smithsonian, the Hermitage, of exchange of objects and loans, long-term loans, instead of just a simple return of objects, which could create a more easy way for the appreciation of the cultures on different parts of the world.
Thank you, Munir. And that's exactly right. More loans with museums, exchanges, and also the training of museum professionals in provenance research, which I think more and more strides have been made internationally. Now it's time to introduce, if I may, and I thank you, Your Excellency, Sheikh Hameh, Assistant Secretary Lusenhoff, and Dr. Bushnaki, to introduce the Charge d'Affaires, Maggie Nardi, from the U.S. Embassy in Bahrain. Maggie Nardi has served for 25 years in the Department of State, including most recently 2 years in Jerusalem as the director of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs Assistance Program to the Palestinian Authority Security Forces. For several years, 2013 to 16, she served as Deputy Chief of Mission of the U.S. Embassy in Zagreb, Croatia. And other assignments have included the Director of Regional Policy in the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau, Deputy Director and Director of the Office of North African Affairs, Deputy Director in the Political Military Affairs Office in Ankara, Turkey, a desk officer covering Croatia, and service on the peacekeeping missions in the Balkans, as well as economic and commercial work in El Salvador, and political and consulate work in Warsaw, Poland. So Maggie, you've been all over the place, done an amazing types of work from political and economic, security, and various types of assistance. So if I can introduce Maggie Nardi for a special announcement on collaboration between the United States and Bahrain. Maggie?
Thank you, Dr. Curran. I haven't felt so old in a very long time. When you went through that full laundry list, making me feel very tired. I want to thank you and Your Excellency Sheikh Ahmed, Dr. Bushanaki, and Acting Assistant Secretary Lusenhoff for taking the time today to do this. It's really an honor to be with you all to discuss this topic that's of great import and also gaining more attention, as you have all told us, which is really good. So we appreciate you sharing your expertise and your insights on these questions, which, as was noted by the Acting Assistant Secretary and others, cannot be solved by any one country. We all have to work together in order to solve them. I'd also like to thank the Antiquities Coalition, with whom we've had a great partnership, for bringing us together today. We look forward to more of these kinds of events in the future. I think it was really important today that you pointed out the range of crimes that are related to trafficking cultural antiquities, like money laundering, terrorist financing, forgery, and illicit trade, and the need to increase awareness. And I thought Dr. Bushanaki's idea of starting awareness in elementary school is really an interesting one, but getting broader awareness is very important. And also, we talked about the customs officers. We spend time training police and customs officials in trafficking in persons. We should be doing similar types of efforts, probably in trafficking in antiquities. And that is something actually I'm wondering if we can do. So I would like to look into that. I think what was important to emphasize, as you did, and Assistant Secretary Lusenhoff did, the number of successes now in both conducting investigations, actually prosecuting criminals, and then most importantly, returning antiquities to the rightful owners where possible. And there has been a lot of success in that in the last several years, which is being promoted widely. And so I think that's important. Bahrain and the United States have a very close cultural relationship through BACA and through Her Excellency Sheikh Ahmed, a whole wide range, whether it's bringing shows here, but also working on cultural preservation. And this is a newer area for us. So we are very proud that today we can announce the 2021 Manama Statement of Cooperation between the United States and Bahrain, which will demonstrate our shared interest in cultural preservation and working more closely together. So this is the second virtual event that we've had. As I mentioned, maybe there's something we can do as far as assistance programs as well. So this is helping to generate some ideas on how we can increase our collaboration, because it's very clear, as Her Excellency Sheikh Ahmed said, that Bahrain is dedicated to preserving antiquities and making sure that looting does not happen, and also that forgeries do not cross through, which has been an issue. So it shows how we can work together collaboratively, and we're really grateful for this cooperation. So we stand as a proud partner with Bahrain on these efforts, and we look forward to sustaining our longstanding cultural cooperation. So thank you again for coming together and sharing your thoughts, and thank you to Your Excellency Sheikh Ahmed for your agreement to sign this statement of intent with the United States. We look forward to implementing it and making it actionable. And with that, Dr. Curran, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. That's a very exciting announcement. And Sheikh Ahmed, Your Excellency, if you want to comment on that, please.
I just want to thank all of you for this great opportunity. And I'm more than happy to sign this agreement. And I hope to see in reality a lot of workshops, and we continue working together hand by hand and to continue doing our mission and follow our dreams to protect the heritage in our region. Many thanks again.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And Assistant Secretary?
Yeah, thank you. Oops. There we go. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to all the participants, Your Excellency Sheikh Hamay, Chargé Nardi, Dr. Bushnaki, Dr. Curran, and congratulations and bravo for this statement of cooperation. I think that should be a good framework by which both of our countries can cooperate and make progress on this important issue. The goal is to end trafficking of cultural property, disrupt the financial gains of criminal organizations that do so, build the professional capacity of law enforcement, cultural heritage professionals, to develop regional networks and to develop partnerships between governments, organizations, the private sector, the arts trade, the museums, all with the goal of eliminating the illicit trafficking and cultural heritage. So I'd like to thank the Antiquities Coalition for bringing us together, Dr. Deborah Lair, Dr. Tess Davis, Helena Rose. Special thanks to my colleague here in the Cultural Heritage Task and Cultural Antiquities Task Force, Dr. Catherine Foster. Thank you, Dr. Curran, for moderating. And once again, congratulations to Bahrain and the United States Embassy in Manama on this statement of joint cooperation. Thank you.
Super. And Munir, Dr. Bushnaki, I guess we have some work to do now in terms of figuring out how to turn this this statement of cooperation into implementation and actual programs and things we can do on the ground to actually achieve a result. And I think it's no small thing to say this is even certainly a tribute to a career-long effort on your part to protect the world's cultural heritage. So a last word from you, Dr. Bushnaki.
Yes, thank you so much, Richard, to have this opportunity to meet again. And now, thanks to the declaration by Her Excellency, Chargée d'Affaires, Mrs. Nardi, from the Embassy of United States in Bahrain, I think we have now a new openings of very profitable and fruitful cooperation in this very important field. And I know that we will be supported by the coalition, the Antiquities Coalition, and by the State Department. I want to say that only 2 weeks ago, I was in the embassy, and I see the colleagues who received me so nicely with my colleagues from the World Monuments Fund to already start also a cooperation in the field of conservation with the new technology for historic monuments here in Bahrain. So the cooperation between United States and the Kingdom of Bahrain is really now built on solid base.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for attending. And again, good evening or afternoon and good morning to all. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.